Is there a way the United States can wipe off its $36 trillion debt? Yes. And I'm going to talk about that today. It's a very important topic because we should all know the vulnerability or the impregnability of the United States dollar. Yeah, it is the reference currency for the world, but it is a fiat currency, and we want to guard against future abuse of this dollar by you know who, the outgoing government. And how do we do all these things? So a lot of thinking has gone into this, and I'm going to share with you a slide deck. It's a very interesting slide deck, and the answer comes in the last slide. I'm not trying to force you to be till the end, but you need to understand the background, the context before we come to the conclusion. Here we go. Does the US government really know how much gold it has? Well, we all know that in 1971, Richard Nixon took the United States dollar off of gold. And I've told this story many times that General Charles de Gaulle was bringing French naval ships and getting paid for the dollars that US owed to France in gold. And when the British also asked for the same thing, that's when the United States said the game is up. We cannot keep giving gold for our dollars. So they said, okay, we are taking it off of the gold standard. This is 1971. However, since then, we all know that the dollar is the reference currency across the world. People are continuing to use it as that. And therefore, now they are trying to find out if there is a way you can make two or three things happen. Federal deficit go away. It's like you start with a clean slate. Second, put some things in place that would make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for another government coming in 4 years down the road, 8 years down the road, whenever, from abusing the financial system like the way it was done in the outgoing Biden administration, and also continue to be the reference currency for the world. So given that these are the three things that are trying to be achieved by, it is believed, the Trump administration, I'm going to share with you something. This has been talked about in commodity markets, channels that cater to commodity markets. So I'm sharing something with you after I have seen a lot of this stuff, lot of information and news about this stuff. Because at the end of the day, gold is the best asset class one can have. And what better than to have the reference currency of the world with respect to gold? So what is going on? Is the United States trying to peg its dollar to the gold? Well, according to a lot of things that are going on, discussions as well as some legislative proposals. I don't know how many of you have been seeing this one. I'm going to give you a proposal in just one moment. It has reignited debates about US potentially returning to the gold standard, where the US dollar's value is actually linked to gold. Remember, what that also means going forward, assuming that it goes back to the gold, then so it will become interchangeable. So in other words, let's say if they make it 140,000 or something like that per ounce, a really big number, that means for 1 ounce of gold from the United States, you have to pay $140,000. Although you can make the argument that in the market, it's not so high. So all these things we are going to talk about in just a moment. So in March 2023, Representative Alexander Mooney introduced the Gold Standard Restoration Act, HR 2435. You can take a look at it on Google to find out where things stand, because that session is over. I don't think that passed, but at least people have started talking about it. The proposal aims to peg the US dollar to a fixed weight of gold. The goal is to stabilize currency and control inflation by requiring the US Treasury and Federal Reserve to exchange dollars for gold at a set rate. This is what that proposal said, but I think it lapsed because the House lapsed, and there's a new House now, and you'll have to start all over again. Now, supporters believe a gold-backed currency could provide economic stability and reduce national debt. I told you about the national debt. I'm going to come to that in the last slide of this presentation, because there's a lot of stuff you need to understand. Because first of all, you need to understand how much gold really the United States has at Fort Knox and in other vaults. That's the other thing that we're going to look at. So the financial experts suggest that for this to work, gold prices would need to rise to $27,000 per ounce to match the US money supply. That is to match the US money supply. not for the wiping the US deficit. Two different things. Money supply is slightly less than the deficit. You don't have $36 trillion in circulation. It's less than that. Fed Chair Jerome Powell had opposed a return to the gold standard. Now, I'm going to come to this calculation, like I said in the last slide, so please bear with me. So, what does the Fed Chair say? He says it would restrict monetary policy flexibility and could lead to economic instability. What it really means, what he's saying is that it is difficult to print notes if something like that happens. Now, we know in 1971, Nixon entered the gold standard, allowing the dollar to float freely in global markets. So at that point of time, before it got taken off of the gold peg, it was $31 to an ounce, which meant that if somebody needed to be paid $31 from the United States, they could also get paid in 1 ounce of gold, pure gold. And once the disconnect happened, you know how much the price of 1 ounce of gold went up to? That is 31.2 grams. You know how much it went up to? 300. And it was the 300 for a long time though. 71, I remember as a student when I was in the United States, 85, even up to 93, 94, it was around 300 only. It didn't change much. And then of course now it's at 2,880 plus dollars per ounce. 60% of foreign exchange reserves are held in United States dollars. So that's the other important motivation. The debate over whether the dollar should have remained linked to gold continues, particularly in light of economic downturns and inflation. See, if nobody insists on getting paid in gold instead of dollars, this would have remained the way it was. But it was France which probably had a doubt about how much gold the US had in Fort Knox. That's why General Charles de Gaulle kept asking for gold in place of dollars. But today, if you look at the market pricing, gold prices fluctuate just like the way oil prices fluctuate. There's a demand and supply. There are days when gold is in great demand. Those days the price goes up, and there are days when it's in less demand, it goes down. Plus, if there's any economic instability fears that come up, immediately the first place that people try to seek shelter is in gold, and then also gold goes up. We all know that. Anybody who's been following gold, we know that these are all happening. So pegging the dollar to gold could increase currency volatility, leading to higher inflation risks and economic instability in the US and a decline in the dollar's global dominance in the forex markets. Well, that's one argument. Then there are also other cons, like negatives. Pegging the dollar to gold would limit economic flexibility, restricting the ability to respond to crises. A gold-backed system is impractical for modern financial systems which rely on liquidity and adaptability. Liquidity means putting more money into the system, putting more money into the people, and trying to get the money supply going and the velocity of money supply going up, and that's how countries come out of recession. So this is Keynesian economics. Be that as it may, how does a gold-backed system makes it difficult? It asks for accountability. You can't just like that keep on printing notes. And that is why people don't like it, because people are used to a certain system that if there is any problem, let's just print more notes. Quantitative easing, for example. And then they misnomered quantitative tightening as just, whenever they raise interest rates, they said, this is quantitative tightening, the opposite of quantitative easing. Bullshit, it's not. Quantitative tightening would have taken money out of the system, which means that banks would have been asked to pay money back into the treasury, and treasury would have essentially taken some notes out of the system. That's what is quantitative tightening. I'm not an economist, but tell me if I'm wrong. So whatever it is, this raises more accountability requirements. You can't arbitrarily print notes, and therefore a lot more things. It kind of shackles the United States. It can't go and cause revolutions in some country in some corner because it suits US interests. All that stuff will also be tempered. Now, the other thing that people are worried about is that if money is not there, that means liquidity doesn't get into the market, then let's say there is a run on the market, that there is a crash in one stock market, that contagion could quickly spread because you will not be able to contain it. But you know what? Sometimes you do need to have these falls. Otherwise, what happens is people just keep living in fool's paradise and heap lie after lie. By the way, I've heard that India has withdrawn about 100 metric tons of gold from the Bank of England because they had put this money, this gold in the 90s, early 90s, and they are taking it back now. And I believe there's another 200 to 300 metric tons left. India has a problem in that it needs to figure out where to store it. And maybe they have to build something. I don't know. I don't want to ask this question. I don't want to know where the 100 tons are being stored. So essentially, that is something that India needs to do. Because I'm also hearing that there could be a gold Armageddon, meaning that if everybody starts calling for their gold, which they have paid for by way of derivatives or bonds or any other financial instruments around gold, there is not enough gold, which means somebody is going to be left holding the bag. That is what they are thinking is happening at Fort Knox too. Nobody is willing to believe that there could be some 8,000 metric tons of gold in Fort Knox. Some people say there is 4,000 metric tons in Fort Knox. So for our calculations, we are going to tell you what number we have taken. All that stuff we'll talk about in just a moment. The other thing that is rumored to have happened, and in fact there are stories, there are like 10 links that we have given in our reference section. Do read those things because it's an interesting story. Tungsten weighs more or less the same as gold. So it is believed that some of the gold bars in Fort Knox actually were tungsten with gold coating on top. And it came out only when somebody, well, I'll come to that in just a moment. How did this happen? Gold dealers and banks have raised concerns about sophisticated counterfeiting methods such as tungsten instead of gold. Reports claim that during the Clinton administration, 1.3 to 1.5 million 400-ounce tungsten bars were manufactured in the US. And I think the amount of tungsten used was 60%. Or I think it is 60%. Since 2010, many cases have surfaced of certified gold bars saying that this is 99.95 purity, but in reality, when you cut the thing, you see that it's actually tungsten inside. These have been found in Manhattan as well as in Hong Kong. Now, of these, 1.3 to 1.5 million 400-ounce tungsten bars, out of this, 640,000 bars were allegedly gold-plated and sent to Fort Knox, while the rest entered international markets. Big con, big con. Now we are talking about China doing the same thing, right? If you watch Sumit Pir's episodes, he talks about that. This raises concerns about the legitimacy of US gold reserves. The FBI and Secret Service have investigated counterfeit gold in US, but large-scale fraud remains difficult to detect. China and South Africa have also identified fake gold shipments, with some bars traced back to international financial institutions. So how does tungsten get filled in? Somebody must be doing this. Somewhere it is being done. And when you have ETFs, exchange traded funds like GLD, which rely on paper claims rather than physical audits, then you really don't know what you are getting by way of gold. Large-scale counterfeiting has been found. Like, for example, you take a random sample, right? 100 bars of gold, somebody goes to Fort Knox and gets out. And by the way, that you have to have sophisticated ways to find out what is inside, because weight will not tell you that the inside part is all tungsten, because the tungsten's weight is more or less the same as that of gold. It's a very, very slight difference, so people may not notice it. What is going to happen, assuming that there is something like that? Would the US still be able to peg the US dollar to the gold? Well, just let's take a look at it, see how this plays out. Politicians have time and again demanded greater transparency from the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury. You know, the last time that somebody audited Fort Knox? 1974. 50 years have elapsed. So nobody knows what is there. So we have to find out what exactly is there. So here is one tungsten with gold coating on top. This is how this is, and some Chinese companies are now openly advertising tungsten alloy as gold substitute, raising concerns about the large-scale operations. Once China enters the picture, well. See here, now on the right side, you can see the picture. Inside is tungsten, just a small thin coating of gold is around it, about 1 mm or 2 mm. Now let's come to United States government holdings. The US government claims to hold nearly 5,000 tons of gold in reserves, and it is believed to be in Fort Knox. Like I said, the audit was done in 1974 last, so questions remain. Now, we don't know if there are some of these kinds of gold bars also in Fort Knox. We don't know. Now, some argue it's time for a comprehensive audit and to confirm the gold's existence and integrity. And here is the US Homeland Security News update. This is an X post. The US claims that it has almost 5,000 tons of gold, but Fort Knox US gold has not been audited since 1974. So that question is remaining. But the amount that is expected to be in Fort Knox is 5,000 metric tons of gold. Let's keep that aside. No confirmed proof exists that Fort Knox gold has been replaced with tungsten, but doubts persist because of lack of audit. Plain and simple. You might ask the question, why do they have to audit it? After all, Fort Knox is heavily guarded and nothing comes in, nothing goes out. It's just a number, it's a notional place where the thing is kept. What's the need for audit? Well, turn this thing around. So if people know that there is going to be no audit, then isn't there a way people will try to steal? Just asking a question. Of course, one James Bond movie talked about robbing Fort Knox too. I don't remember the name of the movie. It was one of the initial ones with, what's his name? My Name is Bond, Sean Connery. Financial experts warn that fake gold bars in circulation could destabilize gold markets. If proven true, this could be one of the biggest financial scandals in history. So now let's come to how to wipe out the US debt deficit with the gold that it has in Fort Knox. We talked about the fact that there are 5,000 metric tons, right? And 1 metric ton is 35,720 ounces. So if you divide the 36 trillion by a product of 35,720 multiplied by 5,000, okay, that works out to $201,545 per ounce. So you can say, wait a minute, today it's only 2,883 or something like that. Why would US go and mark up this thing to such a big number? Well, that's because since 1950s, the accounting books in the United States Treasury have been accounting for the 5,000 metric tons of gold as $52 per ounce. If you didn't bother when it was $52 an ounce, why bother now when it says that it is going to up it to $201,000 per ounce? Because once it does that, the balance sheet becomes clean. But you can do it only once. Then what happens? So what needs to happen is, if US wants to keep it on a gold standard, then the first thing it needs to do is to bring the dollar onto a blockchain. And printing of new dollar bills will immediately go on the blockchain. So whatever it is that you're printing, everything can be traced after that. And this is going to require a fair amount of computing resources, but there are ways to make it faster. For example, there is one patent pending that I am a co-author of, and that talks about a way to try and be able to deal with large blockchain data sets. Just think about it that way. So will this happen? What does it mean for the common man? That is the last question, right? Hey, what does it mean to me? If US says that it is now debt-free, what does it mean to me? Well, what is going to happen is, when you have 2,880 versus 201,000, people are going to immediately think that gold is undervalued. So that could mean that there could be a run for the gold markets. And if that happens, gold price is going to shoot up. Then your average jewelry price is going to go up, especially in India. So I'm just trying to tell you what are all the things that could happen. Or people get say, oh, it's just a notional number, it doesn't matter. I'm happy that US is now behaving itself in that it is now back on a gold standard, plus it is going to put all the gold, the US dollar transactions on a blockchain. I'm very happy. That could also happen. These are the two situations that are possible. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out. I hope you understood where I'm coming from. I hope that Fort Knox does indeed have genuine gold in its vaults. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Namaskar.